Hey everybody, welcome to Two Sons Podcast.
We appreciate you guys tuning in. If you could take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel, we would really appreciate it. All right, welcome to Two Sons Podcast on a very special day. A day that was the reason why we decided to do the show to begin with, or at least the inception for our first round of content, which was Obi Wan Kenobi being released at long last, something I was very excited for. Luke and I have not talked at all about anything on purpose. Back in the day, we would have exchanged text messages, maybe even a phone call, maybe even, deviated away from a group event with our friends to have a conversation that we get in trouble with our wives for, but not today. We saved it for our new podcast. So we're going to be breaking down this episode in its entirety. We both have kind of our own little list of things we want to hit on. And you guys know the drill. We do this every week. So if there's something specifically that you want us to touch on that we didn't touch on in the show, just drop it in the comments and we can get to it there. Yeah. Or respond to one of our social media profiles, anything along those lines. So I don't think there is anywhere we can start other than the intro.
Yes. Are you talking like the prequels, like the shout outs to the original films?
Let's start there. Yeah,
because that was awesome.
The intro to the intro. So, okay, it was funny because it gave me like Grey's Anatomy vibes, like previously on Grey's, like that kind of. But at the same time, like immediately, the way they laid that whole thing out was so cool, and it was like. It was kind of just like, hey, let's remind you why you love Star Wars so much.
Exactly. No, it was amazing. And it perfectly highlighted the evolution of the different types of relationships that Anakin Skywalker and Obi Wan Kenobi have. Like they have like almost like a father-son, like guardianship type relationship that exists. They definitely have like a friendship relationship that exists. So they highlighted that beautifully, I thought. It was so cool. It just paid homage to everything that had been done, everything that George Lucas has done, right? It was so cool.
Well, it's the same thing with every story in every drama or every bit of cinematic art that exists. Like, it's not about what happens to somebody. It's about the backstory that leads to that event that makes that thing carry so much weight. Like there, for instance, like, and we'll talk about this specifically later on, but there's a scene at the end of the movie where Obi-Wan becomes aware that Anakin is still alive, which is something that we never even really thought about happening.
Which was such good acting, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
But again, so good.
That reveal hinges on that intro scene. Or not the intro scene, but the previously on scene, because that is the explanation of all of the emotional weight involved in that moment, which is so important.
And just that close up on Ewan McGregor's face when he realized it. It was so good. I know. I'm so happy about the first two episodes.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Why don't we just start here? It was awesome.
It was totally awesome. Kathleen Kennedy, good job. Seriously.
Yeah, you did good.
And Deborah Chow, she was the director, right?
Deborah Chow. Okay.
Yep. Amazing job.
It was incredible. And so with the intro, there's one moment in Star Wars history, Star Wars lore, that has always resonated with me the most, and it's Order 66. It just has there's like a again, I don't want to say I enjoy it because that's creepy with how dark it is, but it just like hits me in a way that no other Star Wars content does. Like when that scene was happening, I was so like, I'm not a super emotional or sensitive guy, but that hit me like a freight train because I wasn't expecting that at all. Like I'm sitting there like expecting it to like open up with something like funny with Obi-Wan, like, talking shit to some Jawa or something like that. Like that kind of stuff was what I expected to start. But instead it was like, no, like we're going to literally put you through the ringer to start this episode, which I think was super, super cool.
Well, and it carries so much weight because like you said, in like the intro where they showed all of the previous Order 66 scenes too, you totally get the feeling and the gravity of an entire galaxy pretty much shifting entirely in one single moment. From seeing like the small Padawan just doing their things, their thing, learning, and then just at the drop of a hat, chaos. Everybody's life has changed.
Dude, it's insane. Yeah, and like, and so there's two elements of the Order 66 thing that I wanted to hit on and first is the plan itself. So and this is my favorite thing about like the difference between George Lucas's approach to this whole thing and what Kathleen Kennedy has done in years past. Like, you can tell the painstaking detail that George Lucas went to come up with a functional way for the Sith to win that makes tactical sense, that you understand how the Jedi could have fallen for it, and you totally see tactically how it works. Like, the plan for Order 66 was genius. It was utterly genius. And so we're going to talk, this is going to kind of harken back to this Darth Bane trilogy, which is a book series that's in the expanded universe that Luke and I will eventually do a whole series of episodes on, I'm sure. Because I've said before, I think the Darth Bane trilogy is one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars content. But in the Darth Bane trilogy, there's a couple of specific factors there that we're going to touch on in this episode. But one I wanted to hit on was one of Darth Bane's ideologies that was literally the inception of Order 66. He literally called it the Grand Plan.
Yeah.
The idea was Darth Bane understood that the Sith would never be able to defeat the Jedi with sheer power of force. And we will explain why in just a second, because it hinges on another concept from the book that we'll get to involving the rule of two. But he knew that their best bet to successfully overthrow the Republic was subterfuge and hiding in the shadows and basically using cunning as opposed to sheer power. And so Order 66 was the culmination of thousands of chess moves by dozens of Sith Lords over centuries.
Who were all wanting to be in power, but knew that like their lineage mattered most almost.
Exactly.
To the point where like there's certain Sith that we know of when they're getting attacked by their predecessor, and they're like, "Oh, you tried to kill me. I'm so proud of you." You know what I mean? Like we say that in Plagueis.
In Plagueis, like literally after Sidious kills Plagueis, like Plagueis is like, "Nice job. Yeah, it's on you now."
he cries out of happiness because he got killed. No, he didn't do that.
And then remember, like right at the end, like I think Sidious like ends up pulling the ceiling down and finally killing him. It's like, "Goodbye, Master. I'm going to murder you now." You taught me so much. I love you. It's totally cool. Oh,
but so they're all down to make that grand plan, the plan that you're talking about, happen, and they're so loyal to the idea. Since Darth Bane on, it seems like most of the Sith that we know about are extremely loyal to that idea.
Oh yeah, it gets off the rail. There was one Sith in the lineage from Bane to Sidious who at one point turns to the light side of the Force and starts to burn up holocrons and stuff. And I can't remember exactly what it's called, but they consider like it's the Sith view it as one of their great tragedies that takes place over the course of the year. It's a very deep, involved and detailed and thought out storyline from Legends, basically, and we know that Bane is now canon from Clone Wars, so it's interesting. But one day we will dive way further into that. But the two concepts from Bane that
people are like, you guys just did dive far into
that. What's episode 2 of the Bane breakdown? But the two concepts that this whole thing hinges on from Bane are the rule of two, which we'll get to later, and then this concept of the grand plan, the use of subterfuge to undermine the Jedi Order. The second thing from that opening scene that resonated with me, and I think it's a huge part of why those scenes always hit me so hard. Every single Jedi, when that shit went down, was ready to rock.
They were.
Every single Jedi immediately just clicks into like immediate defense mode. And it's so cool because I was actually talking about this on my show last night covering the NBA because we were talking about Luka Doncic and him in the Warriors. And like I talked about like the fight or flight response. Like there are people that when they're down, they just sit there and get kicked. And then there's the people who get up and try to fight their way out. And like every Jedi in every iteration of Order 66 goes down swinging.
They do. And they do a great job with it too. Dude. Could you imagine? So they're so close with the clones, and the clones have true love for the Jedi too until Order 66 happens. And then all of a sudden the Jedi are like, okay, we're defending ourselves from clones now, but we can roll with this. And it's incredible to see, but I guess it's a tribute to their training probably and their ability to multitask. Like there's certain times when we see Jedi, like I think in the High Republic books, Bell is thinking about stuff as he's fighting people, and it's just their amazing ability to like be conscious during like fights and think, oh, this is kind of a unique experience almost, and they're so able to multitask, which is incredible. So I mean, I bet in those scenes the Jedi are thinking to themselves like, okay, must protect Padawan, save myself, but what in the world is going on, you know?
Oh, dude, yeah. At the same time, though, like there's another recurring theme with Jedi in combat that you specifically see in books. Because again, books can do something like while an action scene is taking place, describe a character's thoughts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But one of the consistent themes is the Jedi in the books, when they are in combat, they are not thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, about the combat. It's very much like you disappear into the Force, and the Force essentially controls your actions. And so that's what's kind of cool. So you got the chick who's doing the lesson with the kids, and she just immediately switches into that mode. And like that was the thing that I thought about. Like what it looked like to me is like a Jedi that immediately identified what was happening and just basically disappeared into the Force and basically was like, I'm just going to
go out swinging.
I'm going down swinging. And she 1 second is with the kids and 2 seconds later she's doing like somersaults and like and all this wild stuff. But like that scene in general was incredible. And I thought the purpose of the scene, because at first when it went back to Tatooine after that 10 years later, at first I was like, okay, this was awesome. Then my second thought was like, was that just like a cheap throw-in scene just so we could have Jedi combat? But then when I realized it was the Inquisitors right away, I think it was very intentional to explain, like, to casual Star Wars fans who might tune in, this is why the Inquisitors exist.
Right, because to weed out all the Jedi.
Yeah, we know why the Inquisitors exist from us just being huge Star Wars fans. But if you tuned in and you didn't watch Rebels and you didn't play the video games, you have no idea what an Inquisitor is.
Yeah.
And for them to, literally the first exchange of words is, do you know who we are? And then the guy says Inquisitors, and he's like, do you know what we do? And he says, you hunt Jedi.
Right.
And I think that was very intentional after the intro to be like, the ultimate plan was not just for the Sith to take control of the government. It was to destroy the Jedi Order.
Well, and also highlighted beautifully how potent 66 was.
Oh, man.
Or Order 66 was, because you see, I don't know what percentage of Jedi die in Order 66. I'm sure it's high. I'm sure it's greater than 80%. And then they make the comment one of the Inquisitors does where they pretty much say like, hey, we think we've gotten all the big fish out of the sea, essentially with Jedi. Yeah, they weren't sure about Obi-Wan, but they pretty much alluded to the fact that they're just pretty much searching for like the small fish per se, which I thought was interesting because it showed how alone Jedi were, and they did a fabulous job highlighting that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, like you this is another recurring theme throughout the Star Wars universe. Like the Sith and the Jedi at numerous points in their history have had each other on the ropes.
Right.
But no one's ever been able to close the deal.
They're both so powerful.
Exactly. And the purpose of the Inquisitors is effectively to close the deal, you know, which is difficult. But at the same time, like that to me is like one of the most interesting dynamics is even just letting one inexperienced Jedi, or not necessarily inexperienced, because in my notes I put weaker Jedi, and the guy that I was thinking of is the guy on Tatooine, the guy that had the face stuff.
Right. The one who is hung.
Yeah. Like he's clearly not some super powerful Jedi. He's just a guy who was in the Jedi Order, right?
Right.
But it's like all it takes is him escaping and encountering a child who happens to be very powerful,
right,
and training him.
Yeah. And
then suddenly you have a powerful Jedi remaining. Like that's the importance of Order 66 in conjunction with the Inquisitors was to effectively close the deal.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to the Inquisitors themselves, almost immediately you pick up on a very important dynamic that again is, so Reva, is that, I'm assuming that's her name?
The third sister?
Yeah, the third sister. Mm-hmm. So Reva very clearly has her own personal ambitions.
Yeah. Which is something that we thought would happen.
Yes, which was something
heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, heard it here first on the Two Sons podcast. We that ambition is a core part of exactly why the rule of two existed.
Right.
And it's explicitly why the Sith were so concerned about having things like assassins and things working underneath them. For instance, so Darth Maul originally was found as a Dathomirian Night Brother baby by Darth Sidious, who brought him to Darth Plagueis, and Darth Plagueis was like, you can train him, but only a little bit. Don't teach him everything because we can only have 2 Sith at any given moment. So essentially, like, that's a similar idea with the Inquisitors. Like, the Inquisitors are dark side users, but they are very clearly delineated away from the Sith. And ironically, I think like things like the spinny lightsabers with the blades on the end, things like their armor, I think that's all very intentional from the Empire to be like, you're different than us. Like,
You guys are soldiers.
You are basically,
You're not running the show.
Yep, you might be the tip of a spear that we use, but you are not necessarily like one of us.
Reva wants more though, huh?
Yeah.
And that's pretty obvious. I cannot believe. So, you know, a lot of Star Wars fans know of the Grand Inquisitor. So seeing him on screen was really, really cool.
Well acted too.
Yeah. And I was so worried that there was going to be all these filler episodes. For example, in Boba Fett, there was definitely some filler episodes. In Mandalorian, there was definitely some filler episodes. They didn't really bother me. Like, I loved pretty much every single second of both of those series, but they cut right to the chase. Within episode 1 and 2, Grand Inquisitor has been stabbed in the chest by a lightsaber.
Yeah.
That was incredible. So she has so much ambition, and it's directed. It's directed specifically at Vader.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So she wants to be his second hand.
She wants to be his new apprentice, essentially. So again, now this is we're gonna go back to Bane here. So
get off Bane, Jay.
Yeah, I know. We'll be right back with more Bane breakdown here in a second. The
Kenobi or Bane?
Kenobi Bane breakdown. So Darth Bane was born in a mine and was this big, strong man who ended up getting discovered by the Sith and sent to Korriban to train at the Sith Temple. During his training, he witnessed multiple masters beefing with each other.
Yeah.
He witnessed multiple examples of apprentices teaming up on each other.
Yeah.
And the ambition being a huge problem.
Right.
And at the time, the Sith were organized in what was called the Brotherhood of Darkness, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think that's what they called
I think
themselves.
it was called the Brotherhood of Darkness. So essentially, the Sith were an order similar to the Jedi Order. They were numerous. There were thousands of them. They had academies, and they would train in mass. And essentially, Darth Bane discovers in his own personal studies, because what ends up happening is Darth Bane ends up getting he lashes out with the Force so in a way that's too intense, and he ends up actually taking a break and distancing himself from the Force and distancing himself from the temple,
right?
And goes kind of on his own journey. And on his own journey, he discovers like Darth Revan and a couple of other famous old Sith lords and their holocrons.
And they're actively trying for him not to do that.
Yeah, they were trying to prevent him from looking at the ancient Sith temples. Yeah. And basically what Darth Bane discovers is that ambition is actually the thing that destroys the Sith from the inside.
Yeah.
He discovers that more often than not, one Sith Lord who is supremely talented and powerful will rise to the top, and then multiple inferior Sith will overthrow him,
which breeds weakness. Yeah,
is essentially the theme. And that's essentially what causes Darth Bane to go down the path of trying to destroy the Sith so that he can implement the rule of 2. And what's in the book, it gets deeper. The rule of 2 actually was originally incepted by Revan himself.
Yeah,
and it's super complicated. We won't get into it, but essentially that concept of ambition and a Sith Lord viewing other Sith Lords as obstacles in their way rather than teammates was exactly why the Sith would never have been able to overthrow the Jedi with power or sheer force, because they consistently were culling their own strongest members.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's why we predicted this in our preview episode, and it's why it's so interesting with these Inquisitors. What's happening with Reva is something that has happened to hundreds of Sith Lords over the years.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
Why we're talking about her, the third sister, what are the chances, if any at all, do you think that she ends up turning to the light side?
Ooh, that's interesting.
That came from left field, right?
So we have seen an Inquisitor not turn to the light side, but come to, like, basically, so there's an Inquisitor in the video game who ends up getting killed by Darth Vader, which is what I actually expect to happen to Reva.
Oh.
I think Reva will come to Vader after being basically the right-hand man, and then Vader's going to greet her with a lightsaber to the chest.
Right.
That's what I expect to happen.
Heard it here first.
So, but and that's based on something that's literally happened in Star Wars canon, which is in the video game, the Inquisitor, her master ends up tracking her down with the help of I can't remember his name now. Oh God, we're bad with names on this show.
I know.
But anyway, Cal Kestis and the Inquisitor's master end up tracking her down on Fortress Inquisitorius, and right at the end, they actually kind of get through to her, but then Vader shows up and just immediately just cuts her down, right? So like the idea there is like Vader. Now, in theory, by the rule of two, if Vader ever actually encountered a dark side user that he thought was worthy, he would have conversations with them like, I'm going to secretly train you and then overthrow Plagueis. Now, or Sidious, which that would be a wild left turn, as if he did end up taking her on as an apprentice.
It would be. Here's why I think that she could end up being a good person, though.
Okay.
Disney is spending a lot of time developing her as a character. Mm-hmm. And I honestly think that Disney's trying to make more strong female characters. So it would be a really cool turn. Also, this is a little bit of a joke, too. She's the only Inquisitor that I've seen that has good skin.
What do you mean?
They're all like pasty and nasty.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So like she's not...
She's like a true outlier. Like when I saw her as an Inquisitor, I'm like, why doesn't she have anemic skin?
Oh, yeah. So basically, there's a theory that basically this happens to Darth Bane too.
Yeah.
So in like the third book, Bane's not that old, but he's like withered up.
And all the energy just gets sucked out of Sith.
Yeah.
It's super hard on their bodies.
They routinely discuss this in the books. The use of the dark side drains you.
Yeah.
And it is considered basically like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's considered like blasphemous to the dark side to heal yourself. And so Bane in the books will be like, if he wanted to call upon the light side of the Force, he could to heal himself, but that would be heretic. It'd be heretic to what they personally believe.
So their bodies just decay.
So they all just decay. And it actually becomes so wild that Bane in the last book is obsessed with basically discovering another corpse for him to transfer his consciousness.
His whole entire, his consciousness.
Yeah. So you're right. Like Reva just looks young and healthy.
She looks super young and healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's obviously very powerful in the Force too. I mean, she does some amazing things just in the second episode. You don't really see any huge amount of Force use in the first episode with her, but
for sure. And I think that I think in general though, I think all the Inquisitors are a little weak.
Yeah.
Which I think is intentional. So?
But it definitely shows the pecking order, right?
Yeah, or at least she might be higher than the others in terms of power. But like the Grand Inquisitor went out soft.
He did.
Yeah, he should have known better.
He should have known better for sure. Yeah, I was shocked on that. I was stoked because I was like, oh my gosh, there's no filler episodes. This is going to be one wild ride from start to finish, and it has been, and it's been awesome.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it's been awesome. But yeah, that with the Inquisitors is going to be the thing to watch. Is ambition, how it gets tracked. Yeah, that felt very intentional. The actual literal word ambition was thrown out by the Grand Inquisitor several times. To me, that all made a lot of sense. And then, so the next thing that I wanted to hit on, which I thought was arguably the most important detail that I had not even really considered in my previous consumption of Star Wars, because and by the way, this is an example of a plot hole that wasn't opened, but rather filled. Obi-Wan and Mustafar sees Anakin burning alive on the beach, and you assume he thinks he's going to die.
Yeah.
Right? But he's painfully aware of Vader in A New Hope. Mm-hmm. When he talks to Luke, he literally references him as the man who killed his father. Like, he references him as a man who used to be a Jedi. So Obi-Wan clearly knows Vader is alive in episode 4 and clearly didn't know in episode 3. And that's a connection I never made.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So when Reva makes that reveal to Obi-Wan, I was like, oh shit, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. And that reveal was huge. I mean,
yeah.
oh my gosh, that was so powerful to me. I was way more, I guess emotional truly is the word. I was way more emotional watching these first and second episodes than I thought I ever would be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a great job. Because I mean, you and I had all these doubts. We're thinking, okay, like Disney Star Wars, they're making more plot holes than filling. And then here they are filling up plot holes that we didn't even think existed. So that's a huge applause to Star Wars and Disney at this point.
Yeah, we were worried in our preview about the respect to the source material for the sake of a cheap thrill.
Yeah.
And I thought they hit a slam dunk home run through 2 episodes in terms of respecting the source material.
Oh, and it totally felt like Star Wars. To me, it 100% felt like Star Wars from start to finish. Even the small stuff, like in the back, I love to watch the backgrounds of Star Wars scenes.
This is stuff that Luke gets that I just have no awareness of. This is why I love having him here for this.
So for example, like in all the cityscapes and all the townscapes, one of my favorite things to do is check out the aliens and to see how they're portrayed and to see how like people are communicating with each other. And one of the things that I thought was super, super cool that I picked up on, there's actually 2 things that I freaked out on. So the first one was, Jay, did you recognize that little spaceship that Obi-Wan spent so much time trying to get for?
Yeah, so that was the one that Luke has in his room where he cleaned the droids.
Yeah. So that was super, super cool, and I love that they did that because it showed kind of Obi-Wan almost taking on like that fatherly figure with Luke instead of Anakin. So it was super cool that they did that. But even as small as like having droids in the background of what's the city? It feels like Tokyo. It's where like the Breaking Bad scene happened. The spice scene. Where Obi-Wan goes and saves Leia, little Leia.
Okay, do we know what planet that was?
Yeah, so they say it. The guy's like,
it's not Nar Shaddaa, was it?
No? Maybe it was a city. He's like, you're in so and so now.
And this is a place where all the transmissions in and out are blocked. Yeah. Everyone wants to be a secret here.
Yeah. Anyways, there's droids in the background of that scene that have like graffiti on them and stuff.
Oh, really?
Which was super cool. And then finally, too, not to jump down a rabbit hole, but that little Sentinel system, like it's like a Star Wars version of like
it looked like R2-D2's little camera.
It looked exactly like that, but it would have been super easy for them to have like a really lame animated thing pop up out of the dirt. But that was like an actual like fabricated piece that came out, and you could tell because it almost kind of like wobbles a little bit, and it looks a little bit like cheesy, and I loved it. It was so classic Star Wars, and I loved every single second of it. And when I saw that little thing pop out of the sand after like the intro, I was like, okay, they have spent so much time looking into Star Wars detail, and I was so happy about it. It relieved me more than you could ever know, and it made me enjoy the show so much.
The intentional jankiness of Star Wars is so awesome. It's always been what it's like. To me, it's like you mentioned the aliens. It's the aliens. It's like the massive headpieces, and they kind of communicate like this. Like they just kind of wobble around, and you can tell there's like a human in there wearing an obnoxiously hot costume. You know, they're just like
in a desert.
In the desert, yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. I think that's such an important and core part of like the difference between Star Wars and like a Dune.
Yeah,
is like we've talked about this a lot. Like what is accepted in Star Wars as acceptable cheesiness or acceptable jankiness versus what is outside of that realm. Yeah, like Vespas in the Boba Fett series, not chill,
unacceptable, unacceptable.
But everything else great.
Yeah, they call that town Mos Vespa. Have you ever seen that joke? Instead of like Mos Eisley, but they call it Mos Vespa.
Vespa.
Yeah. Okay. Why we're talking about cheesiness? Because we'll get back into like the nitty gritty of the plot, but this is more of like cinematic experience. Since we're already talking about it, there was 2 things that kind of brought me out of what I believe is like a Star Wars experience. So what I mean by that is there's certain times when you're watching Star Wars, and then you're like really into it, and then all of a sudden you just get yanked out by something that's kind of cheesy or like off-putting. For example, we've talked about the arcing green bolts and the slow-mo like Star Destroyer chase. Another one that we haven't talked about is when Rey gets deployed out of the Millennium Falcon in that like coffin thing.
Oh my gosh, dude.
That one's so bad. But anyways, there's two things that kind of yanked me out of like the Star Wars universe when I was watching the first and second episodes. And these are literally my only two issues. And these are so minute and not a big deal. And I just want to make it clear. I think they knocked out the first two episodes. I think they did fabulous. So this isn't me so much like being disappointed, but this is just kind of like fun Star Wars conversation, more or less. Little Leia must be really fast, because there's two accounts where she's like kind of like running around, one of which is she's being chased by bounty hunters in the forest, and they just can't like walk over to her and like pick her up, right? So she's like sliding under trees and stuff, and they can't reach her, which I thought was funny. It gets even worse when they're in the city and Obi-Wan's trying to get her. She literally like walks like right next to him, and he like does like a fake reach towards her.
I did see the fake reach thing. Yeah.
And then literally like the next scene, she's like kind of like running down a like a corridor, like an alleyway, and then she's able to reach a ladder and completely climb the ladder before Obi-Wan can even get to the ladder. And it's like, what was Obi-Wan doing? Did he like take a hit of spice in between? Like, why did that happen? And then there's one other thing too, which I thought was funny, where in the Breaking Bad scene, I'm calling it the Breaking Bad scene, where like Obi-Wan has like his respirator on, he's got the goggles. Leading into that scene, there's an alien that comes out of like a doorway, and the alien has like really wide set eyes. And then on top of his head, though, he's wearing like human-sized goggles, which cracked me up.
Oh my gosh, I totally missed that.
Yeah, so it's like modern day, like, or if like Star Wars version of like OSHA went in there, they'd be like, hey, do those goggles fit?
I don't
like,
think those would rest on your pupils, actually.
Yeah. It'd be like, on the bridge of his nose. So those are literally the only things that I had issues with these two first episodes.
I did not notice the alien thing, and this is why I need you here. The kid thing I definitely noticed a little bit. I thought it made sense when she was crouching through small areas to gain an advantage, but in any sort of open space environment, it made no sense that she was like that slow. Alleyways. Yeah. And like as soon as Obi-Wan started chasing her on the rooftops, he would have been able to catch her. But it is what it is. We're being nitpicky.
I know.
So back to the Anakin reveal. So we talked earlier in the episode about the emotional weight and the way that makes scenes like that resonate. And I did think that was a really cool moment. And in general, because then of course we cut to Anakin himself at the end of the second episode in presumably a Bacta tank, you know? And one of the things that Anakin did, I thought, at the end of episode 3 that was really interesting, not episode 3 of the show, but episode 3 of the movies. Okay. Was even like, you call it lacking self-awareness, call it whatever you want to call it. To me, it's just the dark side. But like it's fueling for anger. But Anakin really blames everything on Obi-Wan and on the Jedi, and it's completely irrational. Yeah. But it's like you could tell, like even when Padme went down, it wasn't like you brought her here to kill me, like or you brought him completely here to kill irrational. Me, like it's he completely has painted Obi-Wan as the problem, as the villain, and of course we learned that he's been chasing him for 10 years. The Inquisitors have obviously been after him for a while. There's that scene where he's looking into the camera wearing the Bacta tank. It's like one of the most important details of the Sith that you have to understand if you're not deep into the woods of Star Wars is anger is literal fuel to them. Bane, one more time, we'll get into this. Last Bane reference. At one point, Bane gets poisoned and is searching for a healer, but he has to travel a great distance. And the poison is killing him. Mm-hmm. And he is falling to pieces on his way to this place. But he encounters a child and his father who are like navigating like with a little cart, I think where they were farming or something, and he brutally murders them
in front of each other.
Because their grief and anguish is like fuel to him. And like
I legit had to stop reading and like put the book down. I was like, this would be terrible to experience. Can you imagine?
Luke, when he was reading the book, he'll like text me. He's like, dude, that scene with Bane and the farmer and his son was really hard for me to get there. I'm like, I hear you, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Jason's like, I loved it. It was so cool.
I read it twice. But so the anger, and then like beyond the grief and anguish, you'll see scenes where in the books and in movies where it's like in order to gain the energy to fight, they will think back to a thing. I talked to you about that Lords of the Sith book, the Darth Vader book that kind of dives into his mentality immediately after Order 66. And it's very intentional. You could tell like Vader, has to constantly think about all of that stuff. Think about Padme's death. Fueled. Think about Obi-Wan to be fueled. Just on a day-to-day basis. It's such an important part of that dynamic. And that's what I was thinking when I saw Anakin staring into the camera. I was too. He's just sitting there boiling mad.
Just getting fuel.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was a really cool
seeing
scene.
Melted Anakin, because we've seen Anakin after he's been injured in a number of scenes now. So one is when we see him right after getting burnt, and he still very much so looks like himself. You can still tell it's him. But then one of the next times that we see Vader is actually when he's dying with Luke.
Yep.
And he's bald and has white skin now, like a lot of dark users have. And then it's really interesting to see him burnt but still relatively young, just sitting in the back of the tank, and his eyes are just evil, and they're just he's just fuming.
Well, do you remember the scene where Ahsoka cuts through his helmet?
Yes. Yeah.
So in Rebels, which is the another one of my I swear, if I was ranking Star Wars scenes, my top 20, there'd be a half dozen scenes in there that came from Rebels or Clone Wars or things like that. The scene in Rebels where Ahsoka fights Vader, I believe, on Malachor, she effectively cuts through his helmet, and you see, and there's this iconic scene where Anakin yells Ahsoka, and
his voice kind of
comes through in Vader's voice and in Anakin's voice. It's major chills. And his eye is orange, and it's the same orange with the red on the outside that you see in his eyes when he's storming through the Jedi Temple in Revenge of the Sith, just killing all the Jedi. That is such an iconic part of the dark side, and it also seems that the eyes change color specifically when he's in a specific state of rage.
Because he's with Padme at one point, and he's got relatively normal eyes.
Exactly.
And then when he's going through and he's killing all the separatists too, he's got crazy eyes.
Exactly. So it's very clear that kind of like we were talking about earlier with the wasting away of your body, that's part of that whole dark side using experience, is it just screws with your body, which again lends credence to your point that Reva might turn to the light side one day because she hasn't been poisoned.
It'd be incredible. It'd be really cool to see. It'd be really cool. I think it's a total long shot. But when I was looking at her, I'm like, man, they're trying to develop her so much and they're doing such a good job. I just wouldn't be surprised, I guess.
The one thing that's interesting with Reva, too, is, like Obi-Wan said, and this is something that we've learned, once again, from the books and the video games and the shows, the Inquisitors are largely former Jedi who were interrogated until they turned to the dark side. They actually say that to that one guy they almost capture on Tatooine. We're gonna interrogate you.
Oh, right.
But there seems to be some reference that they found Reva in the gutter. Now, she's relatively young, and if we're 10 years post Order 66.
Yeah.
So it's very possible that Reva was more so a child that was discovered that had the power of the Force and was then kind of fed down the route of the dark side.
I see. Yeah, the other thing too that I was thinking of is maybe she felt unprotected by her master or whoever it was. These are all huge, wild guesses, and we totally know that. There's probably a 90% chance we're wrong. So so don't this isn't biblical by any means. But I also get the vibe, or I also wonder if maybe she was with her master and maybe she felt let down by the Jedi because they couldn't handle themselves during Order 66, and because maybe she felt unprotected. So maybe there's bad blood there. So
that's
there
very
might
possible.
be some
we don't know is
realization that maybe the Jedi aren't that bad later on.
No, I'm 100% with you. So I had one last thing on my list.
Okay.
How many do you have?
Nothing in particular. Oh, just a couple fun stuff.
Let's hit your fun stuff quick, and then we'll hit my last thing, and then we'll be done.
The Jawas.
Always the Jawas.
Just classic.
Yeah.
So we were talking about, overall Star Wars vibes, and I felt like the first two episodes they put so much attention to detail of doing something new, but also making it feel like Star Wars. And I thought the Jawa scene was super, super fun. And then the fake Jedi scene was incredible.
That was funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and like,
Kumail is hilarious. I've always found him to be hilarious.
Yeah. And what I liked about it is there's just over the top corniness and stuff that just slaps Star Wars in the face. The Luke Skywalker throwing a lightsaber over his shoulder is a classic for me. But then that was its own stuff. You know, that wasn't like overly corny in my opinion. I'm sure other people thought it was, but I thought those were just like two really fun small pieces that didn't dominate an entire scene, but were still there and created a little bit of lightheartedness.
That's the delicate line you have to march. And I feel like that line's in a different place for Marvel movies than it is for Star Wars. Mm-hmm. In Marvel movies, I feel like there's a little bit more freedom to do that kind of thing. In Star Wars, it's such a dead serious topic in a lot of ways that you have to be careful there.
Yeah.
And I thought that this, so far through 2 episodes, has done a nice job of walking that line.
I totally agree. One last question for you, too, is in Star Wars, there's actually been huge characters that we haven't been able to know a whole lot about. What are your thoughts specifically on the Organas and now what we're learning about them?
So we know for a fact that the Organas are immediately involved in the rebellion. Mm-hmm. We know that Bail Organa is basically responsible for hiding Yoda and Obi-Wan. He's the one that rescued them after the episode 3 literally ends with them in one of his cruisers talking to each other. They also in Rogue One, he's on display. Yeah. He's in Rebels as well. It's very clear that he is immediately out front one of the people that speaks out against the Empire.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things you established, like when I was a kid, it was a scene that I glossed over initially.
Yeah.
But I totally again, this is George Lucas. And he was so incredible at this. There's a throwaway scene in A New Hope. They're having a meeting in the Death Star. And this is the scene where Vader chokes out that one guy for not having faith and not believing in the power of the Sith. In that scene, Grand Moff Tarkin says, by the way, we just dissolved the Senate. The Senate is no more. And then one of the Moffs or whatever, one of the guys one of the Imperial officers steps up and goes how do you expect to control the systems without the Senate? Mm-hmm. And then Tarkin goes, regional governors will now lead with fear of this battle station.
I see. Yeah.
And so what's so interesting about that is and you see this from the Inquisitors too, because the Grand Inquisitor goes you kidnapped the daughter of a senator to try to do this. Essentially, you can tell it's one of those things you think of the grand plan in Order 66 and killing the Jedi, but that's only one small part logistically of taking over the galaxy.
Right.
You still have to functionally operate a government.
True.
And so
you have to have supply lines. Yeah,
exactly.
And so that nitty-gritty stuff of
early
government.
obsession was we have to use the Senate and we have to appease the Senate to keep things under our control. Mm-hmm. But then it got to the point where they were okay, now that we have ultimate fear in the form of the Death Star, now we can ditch the Senate because these guys are completely useless. Yeah. But Bail Organa essentially represents the one of those people within the Senate that was resisting.
And I would go as far as to say that I think he's probably the biggest unsung hero in Star Wars, because you always know of him, or true Star Wars fans know of him, but it's really cool to see his family life. It's really cool to see Queen Organa as well. That was really cool to see in that dynamic with Leia. The whole entire element that they touched base on, I thought was really neat. The other unsung hero is Uncle Owen.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, because in the original movies, we meet Uncle Owen and he's eating lunch with Luke, the whole entire famous blue milk scene, I think. And he's eating lunch with Luke, and he pretty much just seems like a boring moisture farmer.
Yep.
And you're kind of oh man, Uncle Owen's lame. Boo, Uncle Owen.
Boo, Uncle Owen.
Yeah. And then
actually,
we see
he's
him,
a hard ass.
Yeah. And he completely puts, his whole entire family in danger because he has to, essentially. And he carries out the role that almost nobody in the galaxy could probably have done. And not only that, he could have very well saved his skin and said, yep, I know of a Jedi, and pointed over into the corner where Obi-Wan was, and he didn't. I mean, he was this close to death. And the third sister is pretty down for just offing people in the streets.
She's down for offing people.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny.
By any means necessary.
Yeah, so Uncle Owen was definitely about to be offed, and then the other Inquisitors were like, yo, what's your deal? We're professionals here.
Yeah, the one thing that is, and this is nitpicky, but like this is one of those things that has bothered me with some of the newer Star Wars stuff is their incessant need to try to expand on the powers of the Force. And so, for instance, like one of the jokes we always see is like there's that meme where like Obi-Wan is stabbed in the stomach, and Obi-Wan runs up to Qui-Gon, who's stabbed in the stomach, and like runs up to him. He's like, "Master," he's like, "I'd help you, but we haven't unlocked healing yet." I think about that scene a lot. Theoretically, Reva should have been able to just do her little hand trick into Owen's brain and discover if Obi-Wan was there. That. Which is, to me, is the danger of messing with the Force as much as Disney has, is you open up plot holes with that kind of stuff. It's like the scene at the end of Rise of Skywalker where it's like Ben heals Rey, and then Rey heals Ben. And it's like, and then Ben dies, and then Ben dies somehow. Yeah. And you're like, okay, but like Ben dies like really fast, like before she has an opportunity to heal him. Like
I know that was rough. I struggled with that.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of that kind of stuff. But again, I'm being super nitpicky. I do think, and this was actually my last question, so this kind of works out perfect. There's a dynamic with Ben and Owen in A New Hope that's like a little bit of animosity.
Yeah.
And you can tell like Aunt Beru is a lot more down with Ben than Owen is. And you can see that in that. And I think Owen actually literally calls him a crazy old man in A New Hope. And so they did a really nice job of like laying out how Owen has built up that animosity. Yeah. And one of the important details of him surviving the encounter with the Inquisitor, I thought, was him being able to legitimately, honestly look at Reva and be like, true. I do not have any love for the Jedi.
Yeah, he pretty much, he kind of alludes to him just actually disliking them. Yeah, actually, that's a great point. But yeah, so it was super cool to see, two major characters that have always been kind of like the unsung heroes of Star Wars start to come to light, and we start to see their struggle a little bit more. So, back to what we had said in previous episodes is, in some Star Wars content, primarily episodes 7, 8, and 9 of the movies, we felt like the creators of that content didn't truly understand Star Wars. To me, it feels like the people who had their hands in episodes 1 and 2 of Obi-Wan completely understood Star Wars. Completely. They knew all the history and the gravity that the history of Star Wars has had, and they also understood the future and what was going on in the future too. So and like I said, kudos to Disney Star Wars in this event where they actually closed plot holes that we hadn't even thought of. So that was super neat. They've
hit a home run through 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And by the way, I mean, we know Deborah Chow, right? Was involved. But Filoni and Favreau were both executive producers, and they are the 2 guys that I trust the most. And I do think that their fingerprints are all over this as well.
I do too.
But through 2 episodes, it's really well executed. So that's all I had. I do have one last question for you. So my guess at how this goes down is Vader ends up killing the other Inquisitor. Vader, but somehow identifies Obi-Wan. They have some battle. I'm just curious. Is there anything that you're specifically expecting moving forward, or are you still kind of just like in the dark?
I still specifically expect Qui-Gon to play some role in this.
Oh, I think he's going to show up towards the end.
Do you?
I think there's going to be kind of like Rey at the end of Rise of Skywalker, when at the very end the Jedi finally answer her.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I expect. Is there will be a moment of true hopelessness for Obi-Wan in this, and that's when Qui-Gon will show up.
Yeah, and I actually almost just got chills thinking about it. There's that scene. Gosh, you feel so bad for Obi-Wan throughout all this. We know how force sensitive the Masters are, right? So like if someone dies across the galaxy, a Jedi will feel it, right? So Obi-Wan had to live through the loss of true, what essentially is family for him in the form of tons and tons of Jedi. He essentially lost his occupation and had to be a meat cutter in the desert. And
who steals?
Yeah.
And that's going to blow up in his face at some point,
It
right?
It is. Oh, totally. Yeah, very, very obvious. Yeah, you're right. He's very he's so obvious about it.
He does have like the most nonchalant stealing face I've ever seen. It's like
I know. But you feel so bad for Obi-Wan. And then there's that scene that I felt sad when I was watching it is he's laying on his little bed. And then he's just kind of sitting there, and he's like, Qui-Gon, like, I kind of need you. He's trying to reach out to Qui-Gon and he can't feel anything. And then it's kind of like a wide angle of him just alone in a cave. And again, I mean, it sets the scene beautifully for probably what every single Jedi in the galaxy was experiencing at that point.
Oh yeah.
Really quick too, I want to touch on one other thing is kudos for you for the Force catch call.
So getting caught using the Force?
Yeah, you totally knew that was going to be in there.
Well, it's a huge, that whole scene with the dynamic of, like, I thought the scene with the Grand Inquisitor talking about how a Jedi will inevitably reveal themselves was really cool and really well done.
And it happened twice with the knife throwing, where the younger Jedi catches the knife right before it hits the bar owner's face, and then called the catch scene.
The Obi Wan catching, which happens in the video game. Cal Kestis has to catch his friend as he's falling, and that ends up keying the Inquisitors. To come along. I'm really curious to see where it goes from here. I believe, is it Wednesdays or Fridays? Are they doing both on Friday? I'm not sure. We will absolutely have an episode breaking down every single episode of this show. We're also, again, this is a Star Wars podcast, but we are also going to talk about just about everything that's major and mainstream movies and TV. So we're both going to watch Top Gun, and we'll do an episode about Top Gun. We're going to do some Game of Thrones. We might even do Jurassic World. We're going to do a bunch of fun stuff, but we really appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out and watch today's show. We will be back probably within a couple of days of the next episode, and we'll see you guys then.
Thanks a lot.